Hey guys, RJ here, and I know that there are tons of you out there right now that are wondering what the hell just happened in episode 5, season 2 of The Expanse. And don't worry, we're here to try and help ease the pain for this one. So, guys, as always, spoilers are ahead. So, if you have not seen season 2, episode 5 of The Expanse, please stop watching this review. Go watch it, come back here, then we can talk about it. So, that being said and out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in because this episode was absolutely bananas. Probably one of the best episodes of sci fi television I have ever seen, hands down. And the fact that it comes from a channel that used to be a laughingstock not just 10 years ago, it's crazy. You could not convince me in another timeline that this is actually happening. So, point is, let's go ahead and dive into this. The plot for this episode was absolutely amazing. We had a great cliffhanger setup ending to last week when Eros moves out of the way of the Nauvoo, and like Holden's, everyone's freaking out. Not just Holden, everyone is freaking out because they're like, why did the asteroid just move? And it opens up where we get this scene where they're all trying to dissect it on the Rosinante. They're trying to be like, how did this move out of the way? And it's really fun because you get to see like Amos clearly has like a lot more mathematical aptitude than like you would think out of a guy that's supposed to be like the muscle of the ship. And him and Naomi are like trying to figure out thermodynamics and how this asteroid is moving at this speed, at this rate, and they're not able to do it. But I do like that the way that they kind of push science into this, and they bring up gravity and just everything that goes on in this show. They do a really good job of still keeping it scientific. Obviously, there has to be some fiction here because all of these things are beyond our comprehension. So, but they do a great job. They don't try and just like skip on by like the G-force and stuff from the ship, and they have to pump in the liquid into their veins in order to stay alive during that. I like all of that stuff. This show does an absolutely amazing job, and they deserve a ton of credit for that. That stuff is not easy to research. The script is on point for that kind of thing. So, yeah, so they try to figure out Eros, how did it move? Like, what's going on here? And you have Miller on Eros station, and he's like sitting there, he was waiting for the end to come, and now he has to figure out what he's gonna do. So pretty much they come up with this plan where they notice that there's a giant heat zone, and it got a lot hotter when the Nauvoo tried to come in and crash into it. So Naomi's idea is to send Miller deep into Eros, bring that malfunctioning bomb with him, which is pretty much his best bud at this point, but bring the bomb in with him, take it to the center of that heat source, and then blow it up. And they talk about this because Amos brings up the fact that there's a sea crystal, which one of the researchers that's alive brought up to them. And so basically he's saying if you kill the sea crystal, you might be able to actually stop the entire asteroid itself, plus the protomolecule. So they pretty much, and I like the way that they talk about, Alex brings up, I think he brings up that we have conceived notions on what the protomolecule can and can't do, but he says like, so far, we clearly don't know what it is, so we have no idea what it's capable of. And I think that's the best, pretty much, plan of action to go for, even though I think that they're still kind of underestimating the protomolecule a little bit. But pretty much, they end up trying to send Miller in. It's definitely not going to be easy. That bomb keeps going off, and he has to like transport it through all these things. And I really like the way that they have him kind of traveling through the hallways, and he has to like get a dolly for the bomb, and he's like pulling it along. He drops it like 3 times, and it about gives me a heart attack every single time. But yeah, so those scenes are really good, and that's where we get a lot of the jokes. And I just wanted to talk about a few of them. One of my favorites was definitely when Miller's deep down in Eros, and he says, I think I'm getting closer, I'm getting closer to your hot zone, Naomi. And you see Holden's face like, excuse me? And Miller, and you can tell like Naomi's like laughing a little bit, and then Miller has to correct like the sea crystal, okay? Like keep your panties on, Holden. And yeah, so that was fantastic. And then I also like the Frank Johnson bit when he finally gets control of the nukes, and he makes a joke like, okay, if I'm the most powerful man in the system, go get me a cup of coffee, girl. But no, like there were so many good moments for jokes in this episode, in which like I pretty much ended up crying in this episode. Okay, like the end scene. Okay, we're not gonna talk about it yet. let's go over some more things. So I finally am interested in the Earth stuff that's going on. And I know a lot of you guys said it'll get better, and some of you guys were already saying, like, I really like the Earth stuff. You're crazy. And I get that. Okay, art is subjective. We're all allowed to have our own individual opinions. But I just wasn't interested by it as much. Now, I have to say, after this episode, I'm actually really entwined in the characters on Earth, because before, my problem with it was it seemed like these aristocrats, these leaders were like dragged far away from reality of the common man, and they're trying to say all these things about what they should do, and they don't understand anything about the Belters or Mars or any of that. The only one that actually cares about any of them is Christian. And I have to say, she does an absolutely amazing job this episode as well. That conversation she ends up having with her husband is phenomenal. Arjun, I believe, and it's amazing the way that like they do the latency thing where like one is talking over the other multiple times, and they have to kind of like, hey, no, you go first. No, you go first. And eventually he ends up saying, he's trying to say his speech of like, I've tried to smile at every event, and every time you've walked into death's closet, I've tried to put on a good, happy face, but I can't do it this time. And of course, she ends up interrupting him anyway. But I just have to mention, like, the lighting in that scene, the transparency of the communicator she's using where she's looking down at it, it all looked fantastic. It really gave me a lot of emotion, and it actually made me feel connected to her as a character. I can see that she's clearly struggling with her choice. And I mean, who wouldn't be? If you think the end of the world is coming, clearly you're going to think back on your decisions and be like, God, I regret a lot. So I really like their conversation. I wouldn't say it's overly important like to the plot or anything like that, but it gives a lot of good character depth, and it makes me care about her so much more than I did before. I get to see her emotional side, her real emotional side anyway. And so I thought that was amazing. I thought the Secretary General or whatever, plus the president, when they're like twisting the locks and getting ready to shoot off the nukes, I thought that was amazing. Really, in general, I thought it was a lot more connected this episode. The show itself is obviously, split into different sections a little bit just by, where the people live, space, Belters, Mars, Earth, etc. And obviously there's going to be a little bit of splitting between those plot points, but we finally, this episode, got to get a lot of connection between all of them. Frank, Johnson, the Rosinante crew, Earth, like, there was a lot of things going on. I'd say Mars felt a little bit left out, but in general, there was a lot of connectivity in this episode, and that is what made me get onto the Earth hype train. Okay, I think there's going to be some really cool stuff that eventually happens there, and I'm not really sure of what the population of the planet actually is, because they say 10 billion and then 10 billion like would die, so I'm guessing it's north of 20 billion, but dear Lord, humans, like, come on, let's slow down a little bit here. But beyond that, the rest of the episode wasn't anything I've ever seen on television for something of this small of a budget. All right, we're still talking about sci-fi here, guys. We're talking about the Sci-Fi Channel. All right, like their best hit show in the past was something I wouldn't even know. So this is just amazing to me. This is probably the best episode of television I have seen since Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards last season. Okay, like, This had everything. So let's talk about the final scene, right? That's what we're all interested in. The nukes end up failing. They try to paint the target, blah, blah, blah. That was just waiting. All of that stuff was just an amazing build-up. Every time I thought something crazy was going to happen, it didn't really. And then we end up getting to this scene, this end scene in which I am just absolutely, I will probably be talking about this to friends and family for years to come. This was something that, like, I have not seen on an actual television show that got me this worked up or this into it. And so that final scene with Miller and Mao, so let's talk about that, all right? Well, first off, he figures out that, like, halfway through, or not halfway, I'd say like 3/4 of the way through the episode, he says, oh, wait, this is leading me back to the Blue Falcon. Like, what could that mean? And then he eventually, like, starts putting the pieces back together, and she's saying, don't take the Razorback, don't take the Razorback. And so he ends up figuring out it's her. She's the sea crystal at the center. And by the time he ends up getting there and figuring out, you see all of these like crazy things going on in the Blue Falcon. I'll talk about the visuals after I talk about this scene, but he's like walking in and he's clearly like awestruck, like, oh, I'm probably going to die here. Like, for sure, at least it's, pretty to look at, I guess. But so he's walking through, he eventually walks in, him and Julie have this just absolutely amazing conversation. And it's just, it was perfect acting. She looked amazing visually, like her eyes when they like first open up and they're like bright blue, and just the way he's acting. He tosses his gun out trying to show her like, I'm not a threat, like don't worry about me, I'm not gonna hurt you. And the way these two end up like acting together on scene, or in scene I should say, it looks like supernatural for them. And that, I think, that's like kind of the point, is like he thought he was in love with this girl that he's never met. And then as soon as they start talking, I immediately got that feeling. So once again, The Expanse like absolutely nails something like that. It's been building up for that for over a season. And they finally meet, and they're having this amazing conversation of like, he's like, Julie, I think you're dreaming. And, and that's the thing, is she thought she was dreaming, just trying to get home to Earth and stuff, when clearly the proto-molecule is like only letting certain things in and out of her brain. I don't really know how this all works, and I'm definitely going to create a theory video this weekend on this, because, this is like the most information we've got about what the proto-molecule is actually capable of and what it's actually planning on doing. So I think it's interesting that we kind of have to realize that it definitely wanted to go to Earth for some reason. I don't know if that's because of the organic life forms, whatever. Point is, Julie's the only one, and Miller says this multiple times, you're driving this bus, okay? I know you're a fighter. It's okay, kid. I'm going to be here with you. And he ends up, oh my God, it's getting me worked up just thinking about it, guys, okay? He ends up saying, wherever you go, I'm going with you. So he takes off his helmet. He takes off his suit, and he's like sitting there with her. He ends up holding her hand and kissing her hand, and they end up kissing, and he ends up just like laying there with his head on her chest, and we don't see anything else from that inside of Eros until, well, actually we don't see anything for the rest of the episode, because then it ends up crashing into Venus, exploding. We just see an explosion and obviously an indent on the planet itself. I'm really not sure what's going to happen there. I really don't think that Miller's dead. I mean, like, he crashed into a planet, so like the obvious answer is, yeah, clearly he's dead. But they always talk about in the show how adaptive the proto-molecule is, and how it can do pretty much anything if it has enough biomass, or it can adapt and change. And the lead scientist actually said, like, you could walk through a sun if you were part of the proto-molecule and involved enough. So I definitely don't think this is the end, and especially because we saw the preview for the whole season at the beginning of this. There's definitely going to be more with the proto-molecule. This is not over by any means, so I'm not buying that. I don't know if Miller's actually dead or not. Maybe he's become part of the proto-molecule. Maybe the proto-molecule really is dead on Venus. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on that right now. It was too much of a cliffhanger for me to even remotely go into. But if Jim Miller is dead, R.I.P. man. Okay, you were a true hero. Like that was an OP move for you. But yeah, moving on from that, let's talk about visuals and audio, because this show definitely leans on them when it needs to, and it can, because they're amazing. The visuals of Miller walking around inside of Eros, we get what is basically the biggest look into the inner workings of the proto-molecule. And we get to see a lot of cool things in there, where like he walks through an arcade, and he ends up noting, by the way, that it does not attach to dead bodies. So that's definitely something to keep in mind in the future. Maybe it's going to be like the cure for it is going to be like the zombie cure, where zombies think all humans are dead or something and they don't attack. But I thought that was interesting. Definitely a foreshadowing there. But yeah, the visuals, these little light balls are flying all around Miller when he's in there. And the visuals on Earth, where like Christian is sitting there and she's leaning back, and you see like the meteor coming in, and I really thought it might be over for her and whoever else was left on Earth at that point, but obviously it misses. And yeah, there were a ton of great visuals. The whole scene, the entire scene with Miller and Mao in that room was phenomenal. Okay, you have her hair like floating up like Medusa, and then you have he looks very like rugged, and like when he takes off his helmet, you see him like pulling in the air, and like he's clearly like struggling because he knows like what he's like breathing in now. And but yeah, that whole scene with her there and him, and she when he touches her hand to the thermonuclear warhead or whatever, and it ends up stopping, and you see like the little blue glass like come off of that. They don't have to do that stuff, guys. They don't have to do that stuff, but they do, and it looks amazing. It makes me fall that much more in love with the scene. It keeps me enticed. there's nothing else I can say about it. This show was absolutely amazing in visuals. I do not see it going anywhere soon. They've set such a high bar for themselves. I'm honestly worried because that's how great these visual effects are. So moving on from that, let's move on to audio, right? This show has some of the best music I have heard in a long time. It's not Game of Thrones level, but it is damn near close, okay? The scenes with where she's talking, Christian is talking to her husband. The music there is fantastic. The music when they launched the warheads, that's definitely going to be one of my favorite tracks. Like it's building up to this like dun dun. Yeah, that's amazing. And then the final scene, the entire scene with, of course, with Miller and Mao again, and the violin playing, and then the cello breaks in a little there, and like that whole thing, it is literally a space freaking opera, okay? This show is just like out of this world crazy, and I'm going to probably just go ahead and end this review here. 10 out of 10. Absolutely. There is no question in my mind. If anyone tries to argue differently that this episode was not a 10 out of 10, they clearly do not know sci-fi, not the channel, just sci-fi the genre. And this was a perfect episode of television. There are very few times you are actually going to hear me say this was a perfect episode of television, and this is one of those times, folks. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really freaking love doing these Expanse reviews, and this is just one of the best shows I've ever seen on a regular cable news network. I don't think anything else can touch it right now in terms of that sci-fi, outer space fantasy. There's nothing even close to it. So if you guys enjoyed this review, please subscribe to us here on YouTube. That helps us out the most. Like this video if you liked it. Dislike it if you absolutely hated it. Comment down below. I need to know your theories. Is Miller really dead? Is he really dead? Because I don't know if I can deal with that. So let me know your theories down below. Follow us on social media. All of those links are down in the video description. And until next time, guys, we'll see you soon.